Good morning, everyone. This is Kelly Gillespie with the Missouri Biotechnology Association. We're glad to see so many members and friends on the presentation today. And we have just a couple announcements. Be looking for invitations and watching the MOBIO website where we have our events link for September 21st. Washington University in St. Louis, along with their neuroscience department and their new neuroscience department chair, Dr. Linda Richards, will be joining us, we hope, from either Australia, New Zealand, or America, but we've locked in on a date, and I'm pretty sure we've locked in on a time. But stay tuned for that. I can predict that'll be incredibly popular. October, and we're going to see some open houses. We're going to host one in October 14th. If the Delta variant or the Epsilon variant permits and allows us to, but we're making plans to see more people in person. October 14th in Kansas City, to be determined. October 21st in St. Louis at Bridge Park, St. Louis Community College, and their biotech workforce program are going to be hosting us. Also, the October MOBIO Breakthrough will be St. Louis Community College's biotech program, and November's will be a presentation on active pharmaceutical ingredients and from Mallinckrodt. So please reach out to myself or Michelle or Lisa Zimmerman if you'd like to get into the rotation and feature your company, feature your research technology. We'd love to be able to do that. So with no further ado, I'd like to transition over to Aishwarya Arjunan. And I added maybe 3 extra syllables because of my speech impediment. She is the Senior Medical Science Liaison and has Missouri as one of her key assignments. And had a chance to meet her and other principals at GRAIL. And we're in for a real delight today as we learn about early detection of various cancer problems that all of our families are unfortunately likely to face. If you've got any kind of extended family somewhere down the line, it touches, it impacts, and it's really important to have these early screenings. And so many of our companies are working on individual therapeutics, individual cures that will make a huge difference. But combining those early screenings with proper treatments and combining genomics with machine learning and AI, that's where GRAIL is really going to make a difference. And Aishwarya, please further introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you all for taking the time to join this morning. As Kelly mentioned, my name is Aishwarya Arjunan, and I have the unique opportunity to work at GRAIL. And GRAIL is really dedicated to detecting cancer early when it can be cured. The only additional background that I might offer about myself is that I am a genetic counselor by training. So genetics is something that I'm very passionate about. And at any point during this presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will have a Q&A period, but if we don't get time to answer your questions, we can always follow up with the information as well. But very excited to share more about multi-cancer early detection, the technologies that are available, the potential utility in decreasing cancer deaths, and the current cancer screening landscape, along with various opportunities for removing barriers to access. And this is a routine disclosure notice letting you know that I am an employee and shareholder of GRAIL. And a little bit about GRAIL for those of you that may not have heard about us. We are a healthcare company focused on saving lives and improving health outcomes by pioneering new technologies for early detection. We've built a multidisciplinary organization of scientists, engineers, and physicians And we're using the power of next generation sequencing, population scale clinical studies, and state of the art computer and data science to really overcome one of healthcare's greatest challenges. And as I mentioned, GRAIL's mission is to detect cancer early when it can be cured. We're really working to change the trajectory of cancer mortality and bring stakeholders together to adopt innovative, safe, and effective technology that can really transform cancer care. I think, as Kelly mentioned, we've probably all had someone or multiple individuals in our life impacted by cancer. For me, it was my grandfather who died within 6 months of being diagnosed. So it was very quick. But this is why myself, along with many of my colleagues, were really drawn to work at GRAIL. And despite significant advances in therapeutics and guideline recommended screens for a handful of cancers that we have right now, cancer still kills nearly 1,700 of our loved ones in the US on a daily basis. And it's poised to become the world's leading cause of death. And specifically within Missouri, more than 12,000 Missourians will die of cancer in 2021. And compared to national averages, Missouri faces a higher incidence of brain, colorectal, lung, breast, and other deadly cancers. And when we look at Missouri compared to the rest of the US, Missouri has the 11th highest cancer mortality rate. And this probably doesn't come as a surprise to you all that have joined, but there really is a staggering cost to cancer. There's years of lost life, and the economic burden is super high. And the economic burden is especially damaging in rural communities where there are fewer specialists to treat those diagnosed with cancer. And I think this quote from the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network really kind of highlights the importance of early detection. So preventing cancer in the first place or detecting it early is the best way to reduce many costs associated with cancer treatment, patient out-of-pocket costs, healthcare payer costs, and indirect costs. And that also extends to outcomes for both the patient and then also the family. We know that early diagnosis can dramatically improve cancer survival. Cancers without recommended screenings tend to be diagnosed at later stages, and later stage diagnoses tend to be harder and more difficult to treat, which then makes recovery less likely. And so you'll see kind of the impact, kind of the stark statistics illustrated on the graphs on these slides. Early diagnosis is really critical. And with early diagnosis, we know that nearly 9 out of every 10 cancer patients will live 5 years or longer. But when you don't have that early diagnosis, only 2 out of every 10 have that 5-year survival rate. And I'm not sure how familiar people are with the existing screening recommendations, but a lot of folks are surprised to hear that there are only a handful of cancers that currently have available screenings. And those are for breast, cervical, colorectal, and high-risk lung. But that leaves so many other cancers that don't have any sort of recommended screening or process of being detected early right now. And what that means is that the majority of cancers are really being detected in late stages when outcomes are often fatal because most deadly cancers, as I said, have no available screening tests. And what we see is that cancers responsible for 71% of cancer deaths have no recommended screening. And so really the most pressing unmet need in early cancer detection is to identify cancers for which there aren't any screening recommendations at this point in time. And early detection is also critical to address the numerous healthcare disparities that we know exist. Cancer disproportionately impacts rural communities. We know that rural residents are less likely to receive a cancer diagnosis. They're more likely to die from cancer than their urban and suburban counterparts. Delayed cancer diagnoses are one of the factors that increase the cancer mortality rate for rural populations. And one of the reasons for these delays is the greater average distance to quality healthcare, including cancer screenings. And we also know that cancer disproportionately impacts communities of color. Black Americans have the highest mortality rate of any racial or ethnic group for all cancers combined and most major cancers. And one example is actually stomach cancer, which has no available early screening and disproportionately affects Black Americans. We also know that Hispanics and Latinos are more likely to be diagnosed with advanced stages of disease. And so these are just a few examples among many others that really illustrate the burden of late-stage cancer on communities of color. So it's really important to think about what we can do, how do we address this problem, and really by focusing on developing effective early detection technology that can be easily implemented and accessible, we can really help reduce these cancer disparities that we know exist right now and have existed for a really long time. And then now we add COVID-19 to the mix. We know that COVID-19 has impacted society as a whole and caused many challenges. And that's also true within the cancer screening and cancer care. So the pandemic has really underscored the importance of prevention, early detection technology for both the screened and unscreened cancers. I think public health experts are rightly worried about the sharp decline that we've seen in cancer screenings caused by COVID-19. At the peak, there had been more than a 60% drop in screenings for breast, cervical, and colon cancer, and which really is going to have a lasting impact on cancer outcomes. And the National Cancer Institute actually estimates that there's going to be 10,000 more deaths from breast and colorectal cancer over the next decade because of the drop in screenings that we saw just this past year due to COVID-19. So I think this is just another reason it really highlights the importance of thinking beyond COVID-19, really to prepare for that wave of late stage cancer diagnosis. And also looking at how multi-cancer early detection can be a helpful tool in our toolbox to mitigate challenging circumstances like this because of its simplicity. And I think, unfortunately, really our lack of early detection is a constant reality, right? Whether or not we're dealing with a pandemic, for the vast majority of cancers which don't have available screenings, really the lack of early detection is this problem that we're going to continue to see unless we do something about it. And this is where it's really important really to be working together with stakeholders across the spectrum to realize the promise of emerging screening technologies and changing this reality so we can save more lives. And I think we've seen so many challenges across healthcare in general. And even though the pandemic has challenged our healthcare systems, our providers and patients, and continues to do so, I think it's also giving us a chance to really build better resilience into our healthcare systems and specifically our cancer care systems. It's giving us the chance to think about what's working, what isn't working, what can we do to improve the care that we provide, and take a look at what we've seen. The pandemic has really shown us how vulnerable our cancer systems are to disruption. And you can see one conclusion that was illustrated here by the Lancet, urging that all stakeholders should redouble their efforts on prevention and early detection to ensure cancer healthcare systems are not stressed beyond breaking point in response to another highly disruptive event in the future. So I think sometimes things have worked for a really long time, but then we've seen events like COVID-19 kind of just derail a lot of years of effort, but I think it also gives us more opportunities to think about what else can we do, what are ways where we can meet people where they are and figure out how we can problem solve. And through earlier cancer detection, we at GRAIL really believe that we have this unprecedented opportunity to transform cancer care as we know it. Kelly mentioned this before, genomics, machine learning are really giving us new insights into human biology by understanding signals in circulating cell-free DNA. This might be a surprise to some of you, but tumors actually shed circulating tumor DNA into the blood. And these DNA fragments carry signals that are specific to cancer. And to detect those DNA fragments in the blood, GRAIL developed machine learning algorithms and started by analyzing over 10,000 individual patient samples. And the end result, a single blood draw that can differentiate healthy tissue DNA from cancerous DNA and enable early cancer detection. So using our platform technology, GRAIL developed a multi-cancer early detection blood test called Gallery. The blood-based test utilizes DNA pattern recognition through machine learning. And in our clinical study, Gallery demonstrated the ability to detect more than 50 types of cancer across all stages. And over 45 of those cancers have no recommended screening in the US. And more importantly, we were able to do this with a very low false positive rate of less than 1%. And when the cancer signal is detected, Gallery could also predict where in the body the cancer signal was coming from with high accuracy. So existing screenings are essential. And Gallery's test is not meant as a substitute or as a way to replace the existing screenings. It really is meant to enhance the current screenings that we have. We believe that by using Gallery in conjunction with the existing recommended screens in the US, it can lead to a dramatic increase in early cancer diagnosis. And really, we wanted to focus on developing this test to minimize harm. Every year in the US, more than 12 million patients are subject to potentially invasive and time-consuming diagnostic workups. And that wasn't something that we wanted to add to. So the GRAIL test Gallery is designed to detect most cancers and more than 50 primary cancer types across all clinical stages, and really focused on that low positive, a false positive rate, and a high cancer signal origin prediction accuracy. So you may look at all of these numbers and wonder, like, well, what impact does this make? How is this going to translate to the larger population? If we look at what we're doing right now, we're detecting a little over 200,000 cancers annually via the existing screening recommendations. And we modeled what the impact of adding Gallery to standard of care screenings would be. And as you can see on the far right, it would roughly triple our rate of cancer detection in the country just by adding a simple blood test to what we're already doing currently. And the modeling further shows the impact on the left by the stage shifting that would occur in cancer care as well. The gray bars are the proportion of diagnoses occurring in each stage right now. And the green bar shows the stages of diagnosis that could be modeled by adding a test of this type of performance to standard of care screenings. So think about the conversations that are happening with providers and patients right now when they're getting diagnoses at stage 3 and 4, but how that also changes the outlook for patients and their families when you're shifting that diagnosis to stage 1 and 2, and the conversations that providers could be having with their patients about what's available to them. And also, the right side shows us the modeled potential impact on cancer mortality. Adding Gallery to standard of care could potentially avert 100,000 deaths annually. And really, to bring multi-cancer early detection to life, we've been working with our partners at leading academic cancer institutions and large community networks like Mercy Research and the Sarah Cannon Research Institute. And we've really taken a rigorous approach to the design of our clinical programs and collection of our population scale clinical data, which to date includes over 130,000 enrolled participants from around the world in these 4 studies. And we actually have 2 clinical trial sites in Missouri. And this clinical development and evidence generation program really drives the reported results and the numbers that you saw on the previous slides. There's still a lot of work to be done to realize the promise of multi-cancer early detection. We still have a long way to go in addition to continuing our clinical trial program, which is actually among the largest ever conducted in genomic medicine, and executing our limited commercial launch earlier this year as a laboratory developed test. We're engaged with regulators to ensure timely submission and eventual approval by the FDA of our test. We also know that the healthcare community, including healthcare providers and patients, need to be educated about this technology, the science behind it, and really how it can bend the curve of cancer mortality. We also know the importance of establishing meaningful partnerships with patient and provider organizations, and that's really key to this effort. And finally, we know that there are barriers to access that could prevent or delay multi-cancer early detection from being utilized, most notably in the Medicare program, which really covers the largest group of Americans at risk for cancer. But this is important work, and the impact and potential is huge for multi-cancer early detection. And it really holds the promise to be a game changer in this war on cancer. So I hope this was something new and exciting for you all to learn about. But thank you for this opportunity to share the latest with you from GRAIL. But happy to take any questions that folks have.
Aishwarya, that is appreciate you bringing that message to us. I really also, it rang true to me about your company's emphasis on not adding to the diagnostic regimen and onus that's already on patients, that when they're facing some uncertainty or trying to nail down what is afflicting them, sometimes it takes a long, long time. And so being able to pick up multiple diagnoses and grab that off a simple blood test. We had a question, does insurance cover this test, or do they still consider it research at this stage? So a good awareness issue of how the marketplace is treating this at this stage.
Yeah, right now, that's a great question. Right now, insurance coverage is really going to be essential, especially in the Medicare program, which really we know covers the majority of patients that are at high risk. It is not covered under insurance at this point in time. Medicare, it covers new diagnostic tests and treatments automatically, but the same really isn't the case for preventive services such as cancer screening. So really, that's something that we're working towards making a reality, but it isn't covered at this point.
I know that is that something on the public policy side? Maybe you're aware or not aware, but does that need to be done through the appropriations processes of the different state legislatures, or do governors have that authority? I know I worked with Governor Matt Blunt years ago on increasing the number of newborn screenings to match up to what the March of Dimes and others were suggesting. Do you know which pathway we should be aware of there?
Yeah, and I actually think Matt is on the line too to possibly speak up on this too. But I think we've really been working on like a federal strategy with Congress. And in the cases of screening for cervical cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colon cancer, Congress has passed laws explicitly permitting Medicare program to cover the cost of those preventive screenings. And we really want the same to be happening for multi-cancer early detection. And I think, Matt, if you want to speak to what we might be doing from the advocacy strategy, I think he's on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Can folks hear me, Kelly? I'm not sure if we have the tech might be set up to only cover the main event speaker, Aishwarya, but if folks can hear me, I'm just playing back up to the star. So yeah, it's a great question, and it's going to kind of vary across payers, from public payers and private payers, about the arc of access and insurance coverage, as especially as we get closer and closer to to FDA review and approval, whether it's GRAIL product, or whether it's another a competing multi-cancer early detection product, that access is really going to be critical to make that sort of public health impact that Aishwarya was describing before. So she covered Medicare, the federal program, and I've been in health policy for the better part of 20 years, and it was a surprise to me. Actually, I didn't fully understand. And when I came to GRAIL, the only reason why I have a 73-year-old mother who's a Medicare beneficiary. The only reason why she has coverage for colonoscopy or PAP or a mammography screening is because Congress acted specifically in the past to create those covered pathways for those screenings, because of quirks in the Medicare program, as everyone knows. It was created in the early 60s, and there wasn't really a conception of preventive coverage for preventive services. Then so Congress has had to act, has had to act for each cancer screening that became available. And we all know they don't have to do that for a new drug or medical device or hospital procedure or whatever. They don't have to pass the Fulmizumab Act of 2021 for a drug to get coverage. And so there's been a lot of as excitement and data and everything has come out on multi-cancer early detection, and know that FDA review is upcoming for these products, that there's been a lot of excitement in the stakeholder community and the policymaker community to get the access policies right. So they don't have to, everyone doesn't have to figure it out the day after FDA approves a multi-cancer early detection product. And Kelly, to your question, certainly there's a role to, we've been focused on Medicare, but Medicaid, obviously, interaction between state state agencies, state legislatures, and Congress. There's a lot to dig in there too.
And Matt, there was actually another question that you might be able to help with. Can you describe the studies being done to obtain regulatory authorization? Does it require a PMA submission?
Yeah, it's a great question, and so Aishwarya covered the 4 studies. Maybe you want to go back a second to the study slide. But we're totally committed to. We have a FDA Breakthrough designation, and we're totally committed to working with the FDA towards a PMA submission and an authorization. And FDA, the work to get to FDA approvals. We're totally committed. As far as what it takes, because the combination of this being a screening preventive product and it being a sort of first, there hasn't been something like this before. FDA hasn't reviewed a product like this before. So the combination of it being a preventive service and also a preventive product, and a sort of first in class opportunity for the FDA requires the marshaling of data like you see on Aishwarya's slide right now. So there's these 134,000 clinical trial participants in addition to a partnership that GRAIL has with the UK National Health Service for an additional 150,000 patients in a blended commercial and research project. So it's going to take, it takes marshaling significant data, but we're fully committed.
And then one of the other questions is, what is the out-of-pocket cost for the test at the time? So the cost of Galleri is really going to, I think, vary depending on the practice setting and the healthcare provider that orders your test. But the list price at this point in time is $949. And as Matt mentioned, we're really working towards insurance coverage and making this something that can be accessible to folks, and working with employers and payers and policymakers to really drive that broad coverage and accessibility of multi-cancer early detection. Let's see, is there a target date when the test will be available to the public? It's actually available now. It just needs to be ordered through by a healthcare provider. So if individuals are interested in receiving Galleri, they can talk to their healthcare provider and also go on galleri.com to learn more information about the test itself. But it is available publicly. You have to have it ordered by a healthcare provider. Timeline for FDA approval, I would say a couple of years. We don't really know, right, Matt?
So yeah, we're working through, we're working very closely with the FDA through that breakthrough device designation and carrying out these, implementing the clinical studies and other evidence generation that needs to be marshaled for that. And we hope to have the review with the FDA in the coming years.
Thanks. And then let's see. There was a question about how have the large comprehensive cancer centers reacted to this technology? Are they embracing it or involved in your clinical trials? Actually, yes, there's a number of different partners that we've had all throughout the country, and then also internationally as well, that have been involved in our clinical trials. And I think everyone that we've worked with, it's very exciting, and people want to be involved, and people want to be a part of this next step in improving cancer care. So yeah, we've been working with a lot of the national and really recognized groups that you'll see. We mentioned a few in Missouri, but it is something that people are embracing, and hopefully it will result in a better uptake as well. Kelly, that question, I probably can't answer that question for you, but you can take it up with some of our commercial team.
Okay, well, let's just jump on down to Dr. Broyle's question.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Can you speak to how you're working with health systems and research divisions to determine and clarify when detection and interventions are aligned? We may detect a cancer early, however, in some cases, what we should do at that time might not be well understood. Is the risk of intervention going to benefit patients? This is a great question. One of the things that we really focused on when developing Galleri is limiting overdiagnosis. And so we were very intentional in designing Gallery to preferentially detect those more aggressive cancers where intervention and treatment at that point in time is important. Because yes, as you're saying, sometimes we may be picking up a cancer that doesn't need treatment right now, that's very indolent, and that isn't the goal with Gallery. The Gallery is really designed to limit overdiagnosis and pick up those cancers right now. And that's what we've actually seen. So I know we're running up on time, but that's definitely something if you want to have more conversations about, we can share data with you about how we've seen Gallery is doing a better job at picking up those more aggressive cancers. I think there's 12 pre-specified cancers. I shared the most recent clinical validation study in the chat, and you can actually check that out. There's an image of these 12 pre-specified cancers like pancreatic, ovarian, lung, colorectal, and you'll see that the sensitivity for those cancers is actually higher than when we're looking at like all the 50 cancers, because those are the cancers where we know early detection is going to make a difference and we need to be picking up those cancers. And our goal wasn't to pick up some of those more indolent cancers where we might not need to be treating immediately. But thank you. Yeah, it's definitely really exciting technology. I think this is just the beginning. So I'm really excited to see kind of where we go from here and what we can do for patients and changing the trajectory of how cancer care works currently.
Yeah, and I know when I was visiting with both of you in our pre-call, we talked about the company's not that old, and the company's had some pretty significant growth across the country. Can you speak to us on that, just so that our folks that are on the call are, they're kind of ambassadors around and they have a natural interest in this topic, and I think they want to know that info.
Let's see.
I was going to say, I think I lost you there for a little bit. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. GRAIL spun off in 2016 from Illumina to work on developing a multi-cancer early detection test. So we really spent the last 5 years working and refining and doing our clinical trials to develop Gallery and bring it to the greater population. And I know we don't have time to go over all the studies and all of the work that we've done, but I actually linked all of our published studies that we have right now. And it's amazing the amount of work that GRAIL has done to bring this to reality. And we just launched our national launch was in June of this year. So we've really been bringing on more folks to the company, to our team. We're going to be expanding and building a lab we're currently opening a lab in North Carolina later on, hopefully this year, but really wanting to bring this to the masses and scaling our company to be able to hopefully deal with individuals that want Gallery.
Very good. Well, you have really brought an amazing presentation to us today. We are thrilled to lean into that with you in this effort. I know that this will be something that we want to talk to our friends that are elected officials and public officials and health population assets that we know, so that they can be aware of this. And I think all of us just kind of need to spread the word, continue to monitor, and also help you guys plug into local assets on the ground here in Missouri. We've got some exciting technologies that are even doing colon screenings with RNA versus DNA. And it's dangerous to get started on that list, but having connections that are going to be talking to us in the future, very exciting. I think your timing is great. The fact that during the last year and a half, it's been all COVID on the news, and unfortunately, some of these other disease states keep marching on. And unfortunately, people aren't going to their primary care physicians and getting those testings like they were, and that's going to be another negative ripple effect for all of us to have to deal with, not just personally, but as a society. There's a lot of added costs to caring for folks that weren't cared for at the right time.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for the invitation. If there's any questions or anything that people have come up after this, please, Kelly can put you in touch with Matt and myself, and we're happy to answer those questions for you all.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone.